Fala galera, beleza? Tudo em paz com vocês? Sejam todos muito bem-vindos. Começamos agora mais uma live entrevista aqui no canal Metal Musikast. Vocês estão falando com o Cello Emerson e a gente já vai falar com um grande entrevistado. Estou muito satisfeito com essa entrevista aqui, porque eu vou falar com um dos caras mais importantes, um dos maiores vocalistas do heavy metal mundial. Então, aguarde que a gente já vai trocar ideia com o grande Ralf Scheepers. Já vou colocar ele aqui na tela para nós. Só vou lembrar a todos vocês que se inscrevam no canal Metal Musikast. Quanto mais vocês se inscreverem, mais eu consigo tornar forte o Metal Musikast aqui na plataforma e também perante os assessores de imprensa, as gravadoras. Isso ajuda bastante, porque assim a gente consegue produzir mais conteúdo, ter mais entrevistas, beleza? Então, sem maiores delongas, inscrevam-se aí, vamos trocar ideia com o grande Ralf Scheepers. Eu vou falar em inglês, galera. Depois da entrevista, se der tempo, a gente traduz algumas coisas, ok? Hi, Mr. Ralf Scheepers. Welcome. Olá. How you doing?
How are you doing? I'm great. Thank you. How are you doing, Cello?
Well, let's start the interviews with artists of the German heavy metal. And now I'm gonna talk to one of the most important vocalists in the world. I'm talking about Mr. Ralf Scheepers. Thank you so much. You are great,
I don't
man.
see myself as the most important, but thank you very much.
Yeah, you are. Believe me, you are. First of all, I'd like to know how you have been dealing with these times without concerts, this pandemic time.
Yes, it's of course a tough time for every musician. But we are in the good advantage that we are productive people, right? So we don't just sit around and do nothing. We are writing songs. That's pretty much what we do. We collect ideas and write songs. And of course, everybody's waiting to come back to play live. Yeah, so slightly the world is opening up again. In Germany, we still have the restrictions going on, but slightly everything is opening up again, and we will see what happens also with the illness in the band, as you know. And then we are having a meeting how we proceed the next months.
Okay, and Ralf Scheepers, in terms of music, let's talk a little bit about Primal Fear's latest album, Metal Commando. Great album. Congratulations.
Thank you.
First of all, congratulations for this work. It's an excellent, great album. It's one I liked to hear the most in the whole discography because of the diversity of its sounds.
Yes.
It's it's a very heavy and straight piece of music, but there is some hard rock songs and a beautiful ballad. And of course, I'm talking about I Will Be Gone. So, Ralf, nowadays, what's your opinion about this album?
The first opinion is that we never had the chance to play live with it, so. And of course, this is our latest album. So this is how somehow we're really more and more happy of what sound we have created together, because, it's always step by step as a musician to find his own sound and to find his sound recorded. So that's sometimes it's a different thing if you have your own good sound and if the sound fits together on an album, so that's what we all learned during the years. And basically now we're really happy with the results, also in terms, not only songwriting, also in terms of sound. And of course, we're a great team now working together as a great team because everybody knows how he wants to sound and everybody knows how the entire picture should sound in the end. And that's the reason why we always go to Denmark to mix the album with Jacob Hansen, because he's a specialist in doing things the way we want. And of course, he has an overlook of technical side, if this is okay, what we do. And he's absolutely in the team when it comes to sound.
Great. And your voice, one more time, is great. And I interviewed Glenn Hughes, the voice of rock. And I'm going to ask you the same question I did to him. How have you been singing at such high level for decades?
Well, I mean, first of all, my opinion is always that you have to bring it with birth somehow. You have this certain have to have this certain kind of talent, and then you of course discover it later, like when you were out of your, when you're 12, 13 years old, you slightly start to, I mean, you sing earlier as a kid, that's what I did, but later you find out that the voice is changing when you come older. And then of course you got all this inspiration from the rock music and so forth, so you try things out on your own. Oh, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? Can I reproduce? And then you think, oh yeah, it sounds also good, so maybe I can do also singing in a band, and check this out with some mates and do some music, and do our own kind of stuff. It was never our intention. Sometimes you do cover songs, but it was never our intention just to copy others. It's always somehow being creative on your own when you have talents in the band. So everything comes together as one picture again after all those years, when you're growing in the industry.
Great, great. And did you make a different style of voice in the verses of the lost and the forgotten? Something rougher, more raw.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you try things out, and of course, also the voice changes over the years. I mean, I've been singing for 40 years now. Wow, time flies. And even more than 40 years. And then of course a little bit happens to your voice in a good term, so because you're starting also to explore different fields in your voice, for example, the harder stuff and the rougher stuff and shit, but still keep what you have as your trademark, right? So you have a unique voice, and that's what you always use, but you always try to explore new sounds with the voice as well, and try to bring it into the music.
Okay. And Ralph, let's read a question of the audience.
Okay.
Valnio Borba is asking you um, if are there any plans to a new album after Metal Commando?
Yes, I mean, it's a pity that once again we couldn't play live with the album. So we are having a meeting the next month. If we are, of course, we're trying to do some festivals. Well, that will happen, and then we are sitting back, and that's what we already do is record. I mean, we record our ideas. We bring everything together. So we are collecting ideas, and yes, of course, there's going to be a next album, but not we don't know when, right? So that's what we gonna negotiate in the next month, what's going to happen in terms of tour or new CD or both. You will hear from our news site.
Great. And about the lyrics, the album starts with I am alive. What message do you want to share with these lyrics?
Here I am. I'm alive. That's the message. It's a positive thing. Like no one can bring me down. We are here. We are alive. So let's do it. But it was before the pandemic, but still we are alive. So, and that's what's happening right now. Everything is opening again, and everybody says, "Here I am again. We're alive. So let's do this." And that's a
Okay,
statement, right?
great. And next comes along came the devil. Who is the devil that hunts you?
Yeah, it's a synonym for something. It's not the devil. It is everything negative around the band, which somehow influences sometimes in a bad manner. But and this also, the statement is, nobody can really make us stop. We're still there. So along came the devil, but we didn't care. We just go, and no matter what happens. Of course, you have your up and down in the band. It's the same like a relationship, and this is sometimes of a devil too. Humming around the aura of a band, sometimes the feeling and the atmosphere, but basically, and from deep down in our heart, we know what we want, and that's our music with Primal Fear. So nothing can change us, and that's why the devil came and tried to change us, but he has no success. So he tried
Okay,
to break us, right? But he didn't. He didn't somehow succeed.
quite interesting, quite interesting. And there is a hard rock influenced song in this album. Of course, I'm talking about "Hear Me Calling."
Mhm.
Um, which are your main influences on this style, on the hard rock, and generally
Yeah, I would.
speaking,
I wouldn't
outside
say.
outside of heavy metal world?
I wouldn't say so much influence. It's pretty much more inspiration. You hear music since you were a kid, right? So you get some. I mean, this song was created by Tom, for instance, when he had the riff going on, and he sent the demo, and I had the melody right away. So it's got nothing to do with inspiration. It's just something like I can hear this melody on that track, and then I got the lyrics right away as well, because it's something very personal. If you're a touring artist, that you sometimes have to leave those people at home which you love the most, but you sit in the airplane and think about the people you love the most and say, "Hear me calling, I'm still here." So you got that certain bond to the people you still love. And yeah, I mean, this is your own inspiration. It's pretty much music inspired was inspiration for us when we were kids, but then we developed an own style, and we somehow inspire ourselves somehow with the members in the band.
And I really appreciated this album, the diversity of this album. And another work that there's your voice and is so
History.
diverse is Gamma Rays, the three albums
Yeah,
on Gamma Ray. And I really like these three albums,
yeah,
especially Insanity and Genius.
yeah,
But I think that this album was underrated.
yeah. I mean,
You agree?
yeah, yes. I mean, I see every album underrated. Every album could be more successful, right? But
Yeah.
in the end, yeah, it was a very good effort, in my opinion, too. So that was also the breaking. It was also a changing phase in the band again, where people wanted me to move to Hamburg and stuff. And back in the days, it was not possible to create music like we do now with MP3s and swap files and so forth. And that's the reason why they wanted me to move to Hamburg to be creative. I understood the message, but I also had a job still going on in my family in my hometown that was like 800 kilometers away from my home, and they wanted me to move, and I just didn't want to break my bond to my family and also to my job I had, which I still had many, many years, right? So, and that was the issue in the end. But hey, we talked it out, and 1 month later, everything was fine, and everybody understood also my arguments and my statements behind it. So we're pretty fine. Nowadays, it's totally different. It's so easy. Everybody can move to South America, to Brazil, and in Australia, and we still can be one band creating music, right?
Yeah, yeah, because the internet and the digital files.
Yeah,
But I said that I think it's underrated because the way you sang on Insanity and Genius is awesome. A true vocal diversity class in heavy metal in this album.
I agree.
Congratulations.
I remember we recorded it in the old studio of Kai, in the old bunker of the Second World War. That was his studio, and I remember driving there every weekend and having a good time and singing the vocals, going out having party. The next day, going back to the studio recording. Yes, and Kai is a very creative person, and of course he helped me a lot singing the way I do, because he kicked my ass and said, "Hey, you can do more, you can do higher, you can do better," and he pushed me, and I'm pretty grateful for what he did.
Yeah, great work, great album. I
Thank you,
like it so much.
thank you.
And I've been making a special series of videos to celebrate the German metal, and I
Mhm,
start reviewing the classic Accept albums.
mhm.
At the same time, you are the first interview in this series.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Uh, is it possible to say that there is a German way to compose heavy metal?
Yes, somehow, because I mean, we have a different background in terms of classical music. And I just come back to what we had before. Of course, we had our inspirations here and there. Rock music in common was coming up with, already started very early, like swapped over from America with the rock and roll music and so forth. And of course, we had, in my time, when rock music was also combined with glamour stuff, was Sweet, for instance, and Slade and all those bands, and of course then were Deep Purple and those bands, Led Zeppelin, and those bands were pretty much laying somehow the basement of everything, and Black Sabbath and so forth. And later came Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, and of course this also influenced the Central European bands in terms of composing. But we have somehow, and I can really say that also Kai somehow also was pretty much was pretty much included in that time, in the term of bringing classical stuff in terms of guitar playing into the music, right? And of course, yeah, those bands like Accept, like really going hard and heavy, and Scorpions. It was pretty much, we called it the crowd rock. It's pretty much the gig, the crowdy rock. It was the 70s somehow improved blues rock metal, and that's how everything started. And to come back to your question, yes, once again, we have a certain own unique style in somehow combining things with a little bit more classical background.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, I realize it. And about the band Rammstein,
Mhm.
the Rammstein has a huge success around the world, singing in German.
Yes.
Have you ever thought about singing in your first language?
Yes, we did it just 1 year ago. I was singing Metallzeit with a German combination of, yes, a musician called me up and asked me to do that. It's a song from Stahlzeit. And no, sorry, it's from Dahlschlag. And we did that cover, Metallzeit. And yes, I was trying that out in the 80s already, but it never really fit my voice. But now I found out I also did this Spanish cover of Entre Dos Tierras. And it also, if you are somehow sitting there and read the language, because music is pretty much a language on its own. So music has melody and a language has a melody. So as a vocalist, it's not so hard, in my opinion, to learn other languages, right? And of course, you're talking about my mother language and singing in German. That's somehow should be there, but I'm South German, so it was pretty much an issue that I have an accent, and that's why I stopped singing in German in the 80s. I tried it out with the project, but it didn't work out properly. And it's also depending on the music you do. So if you do metal music with German, like Rammstein do, it pretty much, and it's a very modern metal music, and that combination really fits very well. The way he sings is also very unique with the blah, 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 and that's pretty unique what he does, and it's got absolutely a reason why they are successful, right?
Yeah. In Brazil, there are two heavy metal bands have always showed the influences of Brazilian culture.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard about Sepultura
Yes, of course, yeah.
and Angra?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the metal bands there. Not every band, but of course, Sepultura and Angra is of course very known. Yeah.
And about the new bands, which German new generation bands have you been listening to that you would like to suggest us?
Oh yes, I mean not only German bands. There's also a band from Austria, for instance, Garage Band. Um, Garage Days. Sorry, the name of the band is Garage Days. They are from Austria. They're really raw rock and roll metal, right? More metal than rock and roll, but really rough. And the new band of Kai's son, Induction, somehow is pretty well good. And there's so many good talents nowadays. Also, for instance, our friends from Kissing Dynamite, which are doing a little bit more happy metal music, which is great. This is really good sounding stuff. So there are good talents coming up, of course, and yeah, it's for sure that we have another generation of good heavy metal music coming up.
Quite interesting. And can I suggest for you three Brazilian power metal bands with great vocalists?
See.
Okay. First, Ego Absence
Hmm.
by Rafael Dantas, great vocalist.
Okay.
And Ego Absence, it's
Ego
the
Absence.
name of the
Okay.
band. Yeah. Firewing,
A fire wing, okay?
Fire
Wing,
wing.
yeah,
Fire wing, not
okay.
wind.
Wing,
Wing,
okay,
yeah.
okay,
With Ayrton Araújo, and also a very technical vocalist, great band.
okay,
And the third is Trend Kill Ghosts.
okay.
Trend Ghosts with Diogo Nunes. Diogo,
Never heard.
great vocalist.
I
My
think we got to hear from everybody, because if you're saying that everybody's so talented, and you know what I say, it's always what I'm saying when people are listening to stuff, because the ear is also learning a lot. So that's how music is also somehow evolving from hearing and adding your own kind of stuff to it. We have the different branches going out, and we have the different kinds of music which are somehow being created. You know.
Okay. And in Brazil, there's a new generation of very young heavy metal fans who don't know your history, your story.
Okay.
Can we talk about the beginning of your career a little bit?
The beginning of my career, yes, of course. I mean, I've been doing music in school already, and I joined the school band. Not to mention the name, there wasn't really a name. And then I was listening around, because that was the beginning of the 80s, and then the new wave of British heavy metal just was swapping over from the UK. And of course, like we had before, we had Scorpions and the Accept, of course. And when I listened to that stuff, I said, wow, that's what I want to do as well. And so I was joining a band called Beast of Prey here in Stuttgart. We did never record an album, but the first band I recorded an album with was Tyran Pace. And we recorded 3 albums. That was happening after a show of my other band, Beast of Prey. They were visiting the show and asked me if I want to be the singer. And I always worshipped them, because they exactly did the kind of style I like. So it was an honor for me to join Tyran Pace. And that's what happened. So we recorded these 3 albums. And that was somehow the first step into the recording industry. And playing live was a total different pair of shoe, because then we are also tried our first tours and found out how the rock and roll life is on tour, which is never easy, right? So, and if you're still doing music, then you are somehow set to go, because you have a lot of setbacks in your life and also in your musical career, that sometimes people are just quitting and calling it a day, because for some people it's too much, right? But if you are living what you're doing, and if you want to be successful, and of course, I didn't somehow approach things and being, oh, I want to be successful. I just did what I love to do, you know, and never to mention to earn any money with it, because then that's the reason why I had my job so many years. I mean, I've started to be self-employed 12 years ago from now, and that's late, right? So everything before, I was always in the band and doing the job. So that I never did it so much for money in the end, you know. But in the end, then after Tyran Pace, things were difficult with managers, so-called managers, and they somehow sucked the money out of our pockets. So we had to somehow play cover shows with another band to pay the burden of the other band. Pay to play always. And then that time, I heard that Kai left Halloween, and we had contact before with singing a demo for a band from Hamburg, and he was producing this demo. And so that's how we got in touch the first time. I was still in Tyran Pace. He was in Halloween at the time. And we got to know each other and work and somehow liked the way to work together. And later then, I heard that he's leaving Gamma Ray, but he still wants to continue making music. And I was out of Tyran Pace. So he was thinking about calling me up, and I was thinking about calling him up. And that's what happened. So that was then the first time we met in 1988 and recorded the first demos. And that's pretty much the rudimental ideas of the Heading for Tomorrow album were recorded. And 1 year later, we recorded everything properly in the studio. Like 3 months, we booked the studio, the horror studio in Hanover. And then the first album, Heading for Tomorrow, was written. And then everybody knows, no, not everybody knows, but then, of course, I recorded 2 other albums also with Gamma Ray. We were touring the world, not America, but Japan and Europe. and also in South America back in the days. But that was also the first step into the big world of heavy metal music touring and rock and roll style of living and so forth. There was also learning that side of the business. Yes, and then things were somehow, like I said, the guys wanted me to move to Hamburg, and I couldn't. And I also did this application for the British band Judas Priest, as everybody knows, maybe in heavy metal. And I was waiting 2 years for an answer, and in the end, found out that I'm not the guy, which was pretty okay for me in the end, from perspective from nowadays. Of course, I was disappointed, and I had no other band, so I was not in Gamma Ray, and I was doing nothing. So I was sitting together with Matt and Tom from the band Sinner, and they were recording an album, and they asked me if I wanted to do just some choir stuff and some ad libs here and there, and to add on some harmonies on their songs. And they knew that I was unemployed in terms of music at that time, and they asked me why don't we just compose some songs and see what happens. And that's exactly what we did. So we recorded a 4-track demo, and the guys from Japan, JVC Japan, the record company, they were always saying, Ralf, if you got something, just send it to us and we will talk. So I sent in the tape to the guy from JVC, and he said, you got a contract immediately, right? So we were lucky. We were really lucky to get the contract pretty early. And then people in Europe were also very, very curious to sign us. So there were record labels really fighting to sign us. And in the end, Markus Steiger from back in the days, Nuclear Blast, he succeeded, and he convinced us that we want to sign with you. And that was a good thing, because these guys are pretty much heavy metal bunch of people, which are now Atomic Fire. And that's where we still are now. After Frontiers, we're now back in Atomic Fire, which was Nuclear Blast before. Nuclear Blast still exists, but they split it somehow, and Marcus is doing now Atomic Fire. So that's where we still are. And now we have 12, 13. How many albums do we have? Embarrassing. I don't know the number, but we recorded so many albums. We toured the world. We did America. We did South America, Japan, and Russia, and so forth. Yeah, the world also opened up very much in terms of live playing. And after the pandemic, that will be the case again. So that's pretty much my 40 years career in 5-10 minutes.
Great. It sum up your entire career. And
Yeah.
now you are giving vocal classes, yeah?
I also do this, yes, and I also
Yeah.
do mixing for bands. I started to have my own stuff here going on. I also record vocalists in my studio, and yes, and I also give vocal lessons. People who are coming to my studio here also get vocal lessons. I can record them and stuff, and I also do it on online as well. Yes.
Great. And did it put pressure on you when you go back to the Primal Fear, like this expectation? The teacher must always be in a very high level. Do you feel this kind of pressure?
The teacher, what?
You are a teacher.
Yes.
You are a teacher.
Well, good thing is,
You are giving vocal classes.
yes, the good thing is I'm not sitting here and singing and somebody's repeating it. What I do is pretty much I have a huge catalog where I can really tell stories from my experience. And people always mostly want to listen to my experience. And this is learning too. If you hear somebody who is experienced, how he's handling situations and so forth. And of course, my lessons are also doing scales, and then I check what is going on. And we also sing on Skype, which is sometimes difficult, but it works. So I can really judge this. And people also send me MP3 files and send me their productions, and I always give hints how we somehow uh, uh, improve stuff, for instance, right?
Great. And you are part of bands that kept heavy metal in evidence in the music business, especially in the late 90s and early 2000. when heavy metal was far from the new summer fashion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Gamma Ray, of course, and Primal Fear.
Yeah.
Have you ever been insecure about the trends that threaten the heavy metal business, like grunge or new metal or pop punk?
Not insecure, but of course, heavy metal is always a red line of being there as a basement somehow. We always have our somehow loyal fans. The metal family is a very loyal family, so those people were always there. And of course, nowadays you have so many facets of music there that you know it's the same thing. So back in the days, it was hard for new bands to compete against the big competition which is going on in the market, and now it's just also huge in the market. Nowadays it's pretty much not so easy to be somehow unique anymore, and we were in the in the happy phase that we somehow created our own style in a unique way, which is nowadays not so easy anymore.
Yeah.
And yes, the danger, I mean, when grunge came out, I totally hear you. When Nirvana came up and all those bands. I mean, it always has a reason why things are successful, because it's easy listening and stuff. So there was a reason why they were successful, and it was also quite deserved. So, but it's always a healthy competition in the music market. So whenever you want to survive, you have to be good.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Ralf Scheepers, thanks for your time.
Welcome.
As soon as possible, I hope to see you in São Paulo, Brazil again.
Oh, likewise. I love São Paulo. I love
Yeah.
Caipirinha. Yeah, I miss everything.
And feel free to add anything to our interview and leave a message for Brazilian fans, Brazilian Primal Fear fans.
Yes, I'm just, I know it was not an easy time, but we will overcome this together as a metal family once again. And like you say, Yellow, it's just, great when we come back there again to Brazil and play there. It's the most important thing for us to be in the country again to play live. But at the moment, it's just not possible. Still, traveling is still very, very restricted. And of course, the situation in the band at the moment is also not so easy with the illness we have. But we also will overcome that period. Just hang in there, be patient with us. We are patient with you, and keep metal alive. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, keep metal alive, and everybody listen to Metal Commando, the latest album of Primal Fear. Mr. Ralf Scheepers, once again, thank you so much. Thank
Obrigado
you
muito
so much
mais.
for your time. Thank
Obrigado.
you for accepting my invitation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Anytime.
See you later. Keep heavy metal
Bye
on.
bye.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.